Okay, we are here on WPPM 106.5 with City Controller Rebecca Rhynhart. Controller Rhynhart, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we're really excited to talk to you because this is budget season. This is one of the most exciting times for us. It's kind of the Super Bowl for nerds like me. But your office came up with something very interesting that I'm thrilled to see, which is a budget primer for the public to understand the process a little bit more. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So we wanted to create something to make the budget more understandable. And my office is, of course, the audit function. That is the main responsibility of the controller's office, is to be the audit function. But in addition to that, I believe strongly in making government more accessible and more understandable. And one of the things that is too often not understood and like a black box, honestly, is the budget process. So we decided to do a budget primer series, basically breaking it down, saying what exactly happens during the budget process, when does it happen, so that people can understand it more and can be more involved. Because in the end, I think that the more involved people are, the better outcome the process will be.
Right. And you know, when we're talking about a $5.6 billion operating budget and over $12 billion total budget, it's just numbers that are very hard to comprehend. So this demystifies the process a little bit. So we've seen the first part. Do you know how many parts there are going to be yet? And when those next parts will be coming out?
We'll be rolling them out over the coming weeks. And they will break down other areas of the budget and get into details about the process. But our goal as an office is to have things coming out on a regular basis, because now that the mayor's budget proposal has gone to city council, it is in city council's hands, and the budget isn't usually passed until June. So there is this several month period where the public can be involved, and we want to get them more involved.
So what does your office do during the budget process?
Sure. So during the budget process, we weigh in on different aspects related to the budget. So in past years, for example, when the pandemic, I'll just give this as an example, when the pandemic hit in 2020, the mayor did a revised budget proposal, and that budget proposal had some pretty severe cuts to the arts in other areas, and also had tax increases in it. And I thought there's got to be a better way to balance this budget. I had my office look through the entire budget, and the thought process being that if the city's budget has gone up and went up $1 billion over a 4 to 5 year time frame, but yet resident satisfaction declined, according to the mayor's own resident satisfaction survey, there's got to be a better way to balancing the budget than raising taxes or cutting the arts. I mean, we're a world-class city. We shouldn't be cutting the arts, honestly. We should. So my office released an alternative budget plan and laid out the way, very specific plan, laying out the way that we could balance the budget in a different way without raising taxes, without these severe cuts to services. And that is one example of information on the budget that my office puts out to give to council, to help council, to assist the public in the process. Because my office, as the controller's office, I'm not directly involved in the budget. The mayor proposes it, city council reviews, makes changes, and then approves it. And then the mayor's administration spends the money during the year. But what I can do, and what my office can do and does, is really focus in on the analytics around the budget and options, because I do think that the budget can be managed better and want to give ideas to that extent.
So There have been some criticisms of this as being a safe budget, not taking too many risks, not making as many investments as some people like to see. Do you see it that way?
I see it as a status quo budget. Yes, I think it's disappointing. I do think that with where we are as a city, with violence at the levels where it is, our homicide rate is the highest it's been in recorded history, at least the last 31 years. And with the influx of American Rescue Plan money, I think that there could have and still can be something bolder that comes from the budget process, given where our residents are today. I think as a government, we need to be bolder.
So let me ask you about that. The American Recovery Plan funds are $1.4 billion from the federal government. The city received about $700 million last year. We'll receive about $700 million this year. And these funds have to be spent by the end of 2024. And, other municipalities are using it for different things, maybe doing some programming. Philadelphia is using the money to fill budget holes. The city estimates they have about a $1.5 billion budget hole, which this $1.4 billion in federal funding will almost fill that gap. When we talk about those funds, would you rather see them be used in a different way for programming or different kinds of policy initiatives, rather than just saying, well, we're going to use this to make sure we don't run a deficit in a few years?
I think there's a smarter way to do this, to use these funds that could put some of it towards programs and towards challenges. My office put out an analysis of the American Rescue Plan money last year. And what we laid out was that, okay, there's $1.4 billion. The budget shortfall, the 1-year budget shortfall, was expected to be 450 million last year. So what I argued for and still argue for is, let's take 850 million of this ARP money, 450 million to fill that first year, and then declining amounts in the out years of the 5-year plan. Then you have about 500 million left that you could put towards strategic investments. And this ARP money is a huge once in a generation opportunity. This is something that is not common, to get this much money from the federal government with so little restriction. The only restrictions being that we can't use it for tax cuts or for the pension fund. So I think that what it appears that the mayor's administration is doing is using the money, as you just mentioned, just to fill tax shortfalls. The problem with using so much of the tax of this money to fill a projected tax shortfall is that the city's not weaning itself off of the money on the revenue replacement side. There really should be a plan where there's declining dependence on that money for the next few years, and then there's money available to be used for investment, if that makes sense. This is what my office laid out in our plan. That is not what the mayor's administration has decided to do. And I think that, look, I think we need, of course, to have a balanced budget. I'm a financial person by training. Of course, we need a balanced budget, but we can do both. We can be smart and make some strategic investments in key areas on anti-violence, dealing with poverty, economic development, and then at the same time, balance our budget.
And since the pandemic began, before we knew we were getting in this money, and up until now, what have been your biggest concerns regarding city finances?
Well, there's the long-standing challenges of city finances, the pension fund. And I sit on the pension board, and there's been some good progress in chipping away at that unfunded liability, but it still exists. And it is a big challenge, and it will be for years to come. As well as our tax base is very economically sensitive because we are so dependent on wage tax. So those are two, unlike most cities across the country. So those are two issues that are present. And I think that if Biden didn't win the presidency and we did not get the American Rescue Plan money, things would be truly horrible. Because we got this money, it's a blessing and something that we need to be using strategically.
And from now until, I don't even know what an end date would be for recovery, but what concerns you most about our impending recovery from this pandemic?
Yeah. So I think that there needs to be a strong plan of return, right? And our downtown is, by all accounts, office occupancy is below 50%. And we've seen businesses leave. You can see the empty storefronts. And then we need to make sure that our Black and brown businesses in our neighborhood commercial corridors are thriving and getting the investment that they need. There needs to be strategic planning and vision around that comeback. And I don't see that currently. That concerns me. That is something, I mean, this city, Philly, is amazing. We've got a great city. We're resilient. And a great city, but we do need a plan and some leadership to pull us back. So that is concerning.
And so when we talk about some of those things, what are some of the elements or ideas that the city should be considering during this economic recovery?
Yeah, well, I think that we should be looking at what we can do to pull sort of workers, at least some workers, back into downtown, and then also looking at what we can do to put money into businesses in our commercial corridors. Cincinnati did a minority business accelerator, which was hugely successful. And our Enterprise Center in West Philadelphia has done great work. So I think that there are ways that we can be doing that. I also do think that we need to be looking at job growth and what can spur job growth. I mean, even before the pandemic, Philadelphia's job growth was below national averages on large cities, and job growth is important to our residents' health, our families, and a good job growth, family sustaining job growth. And we do need to look at how do we grow small businesses to encourage that type of job growth and help our people. So those are some of the challenges, and they're complex, absolutely. But those are some of the challenges that need to be tackled as we move forward coming out of the pandemic. And we have to stop the violence. I mean, that's the homicide rate, the violence, it needs to be stopped in order to fully bring our city back and make people feel safe. Make all over the city, people aren't feeling safe. So
that's right. So the budget's been presented to City Council, and City Council will now have hearings from this week, starting on Wednesday through May, and possibly longer. And then they'll pass the budget before July. With that in mind, what should Philadelphians be keeping an eye on if they're interested in this process, or if they want to learn more about this process? What should they be looking at? Oh,
well, people should definitely be involved and be present in terms of what's going on. It is a little bit more difficult now that council has been virtual and stays virtual, but I think that there's going to be a lot of discussion, a lot of ideas put out there on how to best move forward. And the more that people can stay up to date and be involved, the better. And that's why my office wants to do the budget primer and the budget tool. That's why we do all that work to keep people as involved as possible, so that people are aware. I mean, in the end, it's people's government, right? It's people's money, people's government. And that's the way I look at it. That's the way we all should. So I think absolutely people should be involved.
Well, and anybody who's interested in budget, which I think should be everybody, but they should start at your website, at the city controller's website, because it's not just this budget primer, which I think is excellent, but the budget tool you had mentioned, where people can hover above a graph and they can see what the expenditures are and the revenue, and it's fantastic. And it's the most comprehensive and easiest to use budget tool that people can find, because otherwise it's very difficult. You have to go, you have to go through all sorts of. I have a 1-year-old, and the budget books are taller than he is. I know. There's a lot of information there. So I really recommend people take a look at your website. I know I do repeatedly when I'm doing this, because it's just a fantastic source of information.
Oh, thank you.
Controller Rhynhart, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's great to be here, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Great.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.